What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here with the quartering, and I'm looking at some interesting trends with Bethesda. It's like almost like they're afraid to advertise their own games. We started seeing this trend with the game Rage 2, and now apparently Wolfenstein Youngblood, at least according to some people in the video games media, noting that they're just not advertising as much, and that could have led to poor sales on their last two titles. Now, it's no secret that Rage 2 underperformed, but from what I can tell, from what you all tell me about the game, is it was fine. It was a little short on the campaign mode, but it was a fine game. But when we look at some of the sales, Rage 2 is somehow selling way less than Rage 1. Bethesda has needed a win with their last major release being poorly reviewed, Fallout 76 last year, but it appears Rage 2 may not be what they were looking for. Sales numbers are starting to roll in on Rage 2, and at least in the UK, the game is actually selling less than its predecessor, which is not exactly a blockbuster success itself, which was why many were surprised Rage 2 is even being made at all. Now, according to this report, we're talking about the physical sales of a game that was released 8 years ago. I mean, the market in the next few years will most likely be close to 90% digital, and a lot of once we've reached the new console, I think that's just going to be the way they force us to. And, you know, being down when you're comparing physical sales to 2011 is not that shocking, although it is a game that's out on consoles. But Rage 2 has arrived to middling reviews. 69 on Metacritic for PS4 version is not great. 73 for the PC version isn't much better. So a common complaint, according to this writer as well, is that the combat feels great and is a lot of fun. It's not much substance in the actual game, which features a large open world game full of landmarks but tiny amount of quests compared to other games in the genre. It's a game that does not feel worth $60 but might be perfect on sale for $20 to $40 instead, and that can depress initial sales. Look, I've been looking at a lot of modern day video games, and I think the $40 DLCs is becoming this new wave of things. We saw with Far Cry New Dawn, the game was, you know, about an 8-hour add-on, 6 to 8 hour maybe, and then eventually you could just kind of have fun and mess around in the world. By the way, still love that game. Still haven't uninstalled it. I'm going to go back to it eventually. I'd actually like to start all over and do another playthrough, knowing the ending does spoil it a little bit, but I feel like I could have a lot more fun if I spent more time. But Paul Tassi also initially noted back in May when Rage 2 came out, if you don't know why Bethesda's Rage 2 is coming out in 4 days, I wouldn't blame you. This is the famous exchange between a video game journalist as well and Rage 2, where they said, literally, who are you? I play video games and write about them for a living, so this means roughly 14 hours a day on my computer or my phone. I'm scouring for stories, and this is what I find genuinely surprising. Until yesterday, I had no idea that Bethesda's Rage 2 comes out just 4 days from now. I've seen relatively little promotion for the game, though granted, I'm not exactly seeing much commercial-filled TV these days, but I just heard so little about it. I know that reviewers got copies a few days ago. I don't have one, but perhaps soon. So that Bethesda's no more review copies thing from a few years ago, it isn't that. But the overall cone of silence around the release of this game has been exceedingly strange. The first news stories about Rage 2 I can even remember from the past year is that this little dust-up with Far Cry New Dawn, which shared decidedly similar aesthetic. Then yesterday there was a good-looking, funny launch trailer for Rage 2. But that's it. This is a weird time for Bethesda and the studio in need for some good news. Fallout 76 was the worst reviewed major title in several years when it was released in 2018. Debuting in a broken state with fundamental concept that many Fallout fans simply wanted nothing to do with. So if you look at the recent history with Bethesda, I think it's fair to say that Fallout 76 definitely underperformed in sales. It was a complete debacle, but I don't think that's necessarily keeping tons of people away from buying new Bethesda games. For example, you know, I have really no concerns about buying Skyrim when it's out. Yeah, I know it's going to be a broken, buggy mess at the beginning. That's why I'll wait a month or two before I pick it up. But sure, Bethesda does a lot of things. I mean, they are ultimately working with a lot of different developers, and no two games are necessarily the exact same team. Bethesda's next major release was Elder Scrolls Blades, a halfway decent mobile game, but one defined entirely by its central mechanic of trying to get players to pay to skip wait timers and open chest rewards at the end of dungeons. Now, again, this was kind of another hit to Bethesda's goodwill, and I think I'm just analyzing it just like you might be listening to me, so this is just my opinion. Bethesda is eroding a lot of people's confidence, meaning, you know, the diehard fans are still going to buy it, and the people who don't want anything to do with Bethesda still aren't going to buy it, but the people that are like middle of the road on a specific title might be more apt to wait. They might say, you know what, I'll wait for this to be $20, or you know what, I've got a lot of new release fatigue. I've got a back catalog. I've literally been talking about my back catalog, and I still haven't opened Metro Exodus. And Divinity Original Sin is still brand new, uninstalled. You know, so it's like, oh, do I want a new, possibly bug-filled game from Bethesda, or do I just want to play a game that I already know has all the updates, and I already know has everything I want in it, and I already know reviewed very well, and I know exactly what I'm getting, and I'm buying the game at a third of the price now that it's been out for 2 years. Now, fast forward to their latest release, Wolfenstein Youngblood. It's out in 6 days, and he wrote the same article. If you wouldn't know Bethesda's Wolfenstein Youngblood is out in 6 days, I wouldn't blame you. Now, Paul, I have had... He's capable of writing good articles, I believe. I think this is a decent one. Another thing, when you look at the Wolfenstein series, another series that has eroded some trust with some fans as they got embroiled in this, you know, is this game about Drumpf kind of stuff? Back when they had the you know, make America non-bad guy free again tweets, that made everybody mad, and then the game's media turned it into like a left versus right thing when it really wasn't that. The core issue everyone had with that initial tweet from the Wolfenstein game back in 2017, I believe, is because given the environment where that label is applied to so many people incorrectly, it was offensive in that use. I think I go back and forth when I look at the interviews of some of the people from the Wolfenstein team. I do go back and forth, and I wonder, you know, are they trying to be sly and make a statement, or are they really just embracing the game itself and who the normal bad guys are in the game? You know, they've come out and said, hey, look, we're not trying to make any statements with the game, but it did rub a lot of people the wrong way. And whether it was Bethesda's or Wolfenstein's intention, the game's media ran with it, and you had people like Vice running articles that were like, wow, this is obviously about Drumpf, right? And it put Bethesda in this weird position where, you know, maybe they aren't happy with the guy, but they weren't trying to put themselves in that position, but the media put them in that position. And when we look at the recent interview they had with GameSpot, you have a journalist asking this very same question. Speaking to the larger Wolfenstein series, it's been interesting to see how people react to it due to this current climate in the States. It's a series about fighting the bad guys from WW2 and a larger influence of bad things. It's always been political. In a light of the reception that the new Colossus had, did you think the developers felt inclined to cover this topic on a deeper level? Now, this is obviously a leading question to write an article about it, and there will be articles when the game comes out about it, but here's their answer. Well, I can't really say that ever affected us, because it hasn't affected us, because it has. The game is definitely political when you have these bad guys, but we've always tried to stick with the timeline that we had envisioned, beginning with New Order. We have this Wolfenstein timeline, the lore of it, and we want to stick to that as much as possible. Even though I agree that it becomes more divisive in many ways due to real life, we never set out to make a statement in any way. I get this question a lot. I read the comments from readers after an interview, and I said the same thing that I'm saying to you now. The one comment I saw on a feed was like, why can't you just say that you don't like white folks? For me, we don't also have to understand and accept. We also have to understand and accept that there are people that will react like that. We will continue to see these type of comments, but for me, there's no logic to them. Well, I find that statement kind of disingenuous in the fact that, or well, maybe he's just out of the loop. To me, it's very clear why people feel this way, because video games journalism tends to vilify people in a certain way and tends to push a particular agenda. But that doesn't necessarily mean the man being interviewed here has that same agenda. He goes on to say it's a hard question, even though I've answered it so many times. I still don't really know exactly what to say. But we want to make an entertaining game, and we want to tell a story about fighting evil in the world, and that is represented by the bad guys from WW2. So, you know, I think people did enjoy a lot, and obviously Wolfenstein has a huge, long history of goodwill, but has Bethesda squandered it all with a series of mini controversies, whether it's the tweets? Again, maybe that wasn't their intention, but they didn't come out and clarify anything. They just put it out there. Go back to Paul's article here. I'm back once again criticizing Bethesda's marketing, or lack thereof, for failing to tell me and a whole lot of other people that a major game was on the verge of release. Thanks to Skill Up today, I learned that Wolfenstein Youngblood is actually 6 days out from now on July 26th. I'm not sure that Wolfenstein Youngblood is necessarily a big release. For me, the game definitely looks like, you know, probably not DLC because it's obviously new protagonists, but it's a $40 game. They're pricing it at that level up front. So that kind of tells me that Bethesda doesn't even see it as a major release. Now, it is getting a Switch release at launch, which is pretty cool. But, you know, ultimately, the game, for me, you know, when I think about why I'm not interested in it, it has very little to do with what Bethesda's done in the past. It has more to do with the dialogue between the daughters. It's just so unendingly cringy. The cutscenes make my skin crawl. It's like a 40-year-old white dude wrote what he thought a 19-year-old girls would say. It's like they're caricatures. They're unfunny. It's like somebody told this dude, "Hey, millennials swear a lot, so we should make the kids swear a ton in the game." I mean, it's really bizarre. You know, so the cutscenes, not for me. And then the emphasis on co-op kind of makes it not for me. I'm just a single, like, story mode. The game's got to stand on its own. And some of the early reviews of Wolfenstein Youngblood have included such critiques as, oh, they're bullet sponges. Now they're, the enemies or the weapons absolutely need tweaking. DPS, you know, is off. There's health bars above the characters, which tend to break immersion. Small things, but when I read that, it's like, well, I'm not really looking for a co-op game. I don't like to have a friend to play a video game. I just want to play it when I want to play it. So if anything, that turns me off more than anything. You know, will I be interested in picking it up on the cheap when my buddy Open Mind wants to play one Friday and he's traveling on the road? Yeah, I'll probably pick it up if it's on sale. It looks like it might be kind of fun to play with a friend, but it doesn't really intrigue me as a single player fan. Youngblood is actually out 6 days from now. As a video game journalist who spends 16 hours a day on the internet, now it's up from 14, this is genuinely the first time hearing about Youngblood since probably E3 itself a month ago. If it all sounds familiar, it's because I wrote a similar piece after Revelation with Rage 2, a conflict that got me into a Twitter roast war with the official game account itself. Has become my very own internet meme. I think it was just a reply. I don't know if they replied multiple times. But yet again, another Bethesda game that is releasing under the radar, and I'm just not clear as why these titles keep launching with so little buzz attached to them. Last time this happened with Rage, I was accused of simply not following the proper social media channels to see the release info. But Bethesda hasn't tweeted about Youngblood at all recently, as its feed is all about Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Blades. Neither has Arcane, who is working on Youngblood. Rather, you have to follow Machine Games, the other dev on it, or literally the Wolfenstein account itself to see any Youngblood info. The same goes for YouTube, where Bethesda's last upload was an Elder Scrolls Online video 2 weeks ago. I'm unclear why this keeps happening with Bethesda releases specifically, but here we go again. And at the time this happened, last time it happened didn't go well for Rage 2, which ended up launching and underselling Rage 1 at release, which was not exactly a smash hit itself. Like Rage 2, Youngblood is a game that I've been looking forward to, but I find it weird that it's suddenly here with little fanfare or promotion. The revelation of Wolfenstein has been fantastic. Revitalization, sorry, it has been fantastic to watch. Now it seems weird that the title isn't building on that momentum. It's just kind of here. Bethesda's big release this year will be Doom Eternal, and that's a game where I definitely know the release date, late November. But if you asked me yesterday if Youngblood came out, I probably would have said, oh, I forgot that game existed. You know, maybe that's true. What's possible is they blew their marketing budget on Fallout 76. Here's some possibilities. One, they aren't that confident in these games. They don't want to pour a ton of marketing into them because they don't think they're that great. That's a bit of a stretch, but some bean counter somewhere is looking at sales projections and deciding whether or not they should, run a Super Bowl ad or not. Another possibility is that they're saving the money, that they know that they're just betting on Doom Eternal being a monstrous release. They know that Doom Eternal is coming out in the busiest time of the year, and they want to have every penny available for marketing for that because they view it as a higher ceiling, right? I think that's likely part of it. As a marketing agent myself, I run a marketing agency for a living. This is something I encounter with all the time with clients. They have releases and they have sales projections, but they look at something like, it's very possible they look at Wolfenstein Youngblood and say, it's going to sell like 2 million copies. If we spend $1 million, it might sell 3 million copies. But if we spend $1 million on Doom Eternal advertising, it'll do $2, $3, $4, $5 million just because of all the goodwill the Doom franchise has. Wolfenstein definitely has burned a little bit of goodwill with their controversies and marketing over the last game and many of its woke moments that were pointed out. But ultimately, this is the game on the same engine that the last Wolfenstein game was. The voice acting and facial features are not good looking at all. The weapons need tweaking. The game itself will probably be a fine weekend play for $20, but I'm not sure anybody's super duper excited about picking it up. And maybe Bethesda's reading the writing on the wall and deciding, hey, look, you know what? Let's just get Rage 2 out there. Let's get Wolfenstein Youngblood out there. They're not that great. They're on our old engine. But we want the palette cleansed for Doom Eternal. We want to have, $100 million to advertise for Skyrim. You look at all the money they likely lost on Fallout 76 that they're still trying to recoup. That probably dug into their marketing budget. And they're also looking at which has the higher ceiling and all the other things going on around it. You have some articles out there like this one on GamesBeat talking about, hey, this is like a lighter take on the Wolfenstein series, and it's got jokes and stuff like that. And sure, that's okay. But I don't know. What do you think is going on with Bethesda? Are they broke? Do they think these games won't perform well? I don't know any other reason, in my experience as a marketing professional, why a company wouldn't spend money on a brand new release, just expect people to just buy it, unless it's... I mean, you can't even say that Apex Legends did that because they spent all the money on influencers after launch. So maybe they're saving money for that. They're going to do some big, esports thing with the game, but there's no multiplayer. I mean, I guess, it's difficult. The game itself is download only, so you can't even get physical copies. So we're not going to have much to compare it to, and nobody really shares their digital download information. So it'll be interesting to see. Are you interested in Wolfenstein Youngblood? Why didn't you buy Rage 2? And what do you think is going on with Bethesda? I'll be interested to see all your comments in the comment section down below. We'll talk to you again real soon.